The Pennsylvania Poetry Society Incorporated 2022 Fall Conference proudly presents our featured poet, Miss Carol Clark Williams, sharing her published work, York, Pennsylvania, November 5th, 2022.
Before I introduce Carol, I want to tell you what the judge had to say about her book and why it was selected as the winner. The judge was Rosemary Watola Traumer. She's a poet from Colorado. She's a fantastic poet, fantastic person. She said, this collection stood out because of its cohesion as a manuscript. The poems all seemed in service of a larger story, the story outlined in the title poem, which seemed in fact like a roadmap for how to read the book. I liked that it had variety in its poetics and ventured into form. I loved the conversations in the poems with history, other poets, and other stories. Myself, I've known Carol 26 years now, I think it is, somewhere in there. When I first joined the Pennsylvania Poetry Society, she took me under her wing. She was my mentor, so I am so proud that I was able to help her get this collection out because I served as the editor on the book. Without further delay, I want to introduce to you Carol Clark Williams.
Thank you for coming, those of you who are not PPS members, and thank you for the opportunity to read. I appreciate it. Not every poem that I read is going to be from my book. Stephen has heard my book so many times and gone over it so often. I thought I'd do a little mercy and read some poems that are not part of it. And I'm going to begin with another poet, my all-time favorite, William Stafford, and read one of my favorite poems of his, A Story That Could Be True. If you were exchanged in the cradle, and your real mother died without ever telling the story, then no one knows your name. And somewhere in the world, your father is lost and needs you, but you are far away. He can never find how true you are, how ready when the great wind comes, and the robberies of the rain. You stand on the corner shivering. The people who go by, you wonder at their calm. They miss the whisper that runs any day in your mind. Who are you really, wanderer? And the answer you have to give, no matter how dark and cold the world around us is, maybe I'm a king. Please don't clap, okay? You can get me at the end. It's Stop. Okay, the title poem of my book sat around for 20 years before it finally got put in the book. Unpacking for the Journey. When I became a Christian at the age of 50, I thought that I would automatically be one of those people who stopped drinking, stopped gambling, and renewed my life. And I discovered that you go back through all the old grudges and resentments and review them before you can begin to step forward. And so this poem was written on that fact. You find you have gone in smaller circles, traveler lost in twilight forest, coming back to where you started. Landmarks change their shadow shapes each time you look at them. Yet you must look, must kneel to trace the frowning face, the bitter words worn by memory into your mother's tombstone. Must exhume your autocratic father for yet another autopsy. Slide the scalpel of adult perception through his cold-eyed indifference. You must unearth the tattered suitcase of souvenirs. Examine every sharp-edged, tarnished artifact from both sides. Remember them new, heavy, with labels of connotation you never could decipher. Before you can replace them in their proper compartments, pull down the scarred, graying lid. Lock them safe out of the mind's eye before you can set the whole damned business down. Pull yourself to your aching feet and once again begin the hopeful, circular walk away. Since we are in a political time of the year, I brought my first political poem I wrote way back when George Wallace was shot. Are any of you old enough to remember the attempt on his life, which seemed to be preceded and followed by so many shots being fired at our leaders and our government officials? And although Wallace was crippled for life, he insisted that he would run again as governor. And years later, he changed his intensely racist view to one of conciliation and began to work for unity. This is called Fall. Can everyone hear me okay? The fallen candidate avers that though he'll never walk again, he will continue running. Oh well, why not? The world is shot to hell in a handgun. Oh Eden, where 1,000 flowers raise bright faces in a patterned hymn of praise, while through the twilight God comes in to speak of happenings in the uneventful week, and every blossom, animal and bird hangs on the golden radiance of his word. My heart remembers you. The headlines shriek tragedy. Good news is no news. Milk every detail from the shattered mother whose child's charred body no one can recover from flaming ruins. Was he a good boy? Did his teachers like him? How do you feel about him now he's gone? This is the stuff our dreams are made upon. Oh Eden, where the evening light kneels down and God draws near to make his mercies known. With eager eyes the animals crowd close to hear, amid the splendor of that voice, a gentle recap of the week's events. As flowers lift bright heads in innocence, my heart remembers you. Good news is no news. Show the film once at 6 and twice at 10, then in slow motion show it all again. Here's how he felt. Here where the shots rang out. See how the flowers of blood begin to sprout and grow bright petals on his business suit. Oh Eden, we are all fallen. I doubt that we will ever walk again. An important influence on my life has always been poetry. I think all of us have our one thing, our secret identity, and eventually that comes out of the closet and we show the world who we really are. Poetry has always been mine, and this poem describes its progress in my life. Poetry lover. Eventually it stalks the chantry of your mind with a heavy step and proud face, sits at your communion table, fork and knife poised in its hand, criticizes the elements and their presentation, becomes the adversary. Eventually, it demands both sides of the bed, total control of the television remote, dictates what music you can play on the stereo, takes over the closet. Far cry from the day it knocked timidly at your door, knelt at your feet, waiting to speak, or fled, and you eagerly pursued it down the merciless street. And this one is my writer's block poem, and I think we've all encountered that as well. It's called Lost Art. I have misplaced the small notebook in which I meant to write my poems. Coffee cloth and slobbered into the smoky pot. The washer's heart beats rhythmically. Shirts surface and dive in synchronized swim. The sun slides sideways, shadows lengthen on the clothesline. My fingers are summoned to the kitten's uplifted chin. There is a wonderful course online. It's free. It's called Modern and Contemporary Poetry on Coursera.org. And at one point in the postmodern poets, they talked about Duchamp's painting Nude Descending a Staircase, and a poem that was written, patterned after that painting. And they also talked about the fountain. How many of you have seen that in the museum? It's an upside-down toilet, just in case you've never seen it on a pedestal. So this poem is explicating Duchamp's The Fountain. The museum woman in oversized cardigan and tilted spectacles describes a white urinal as art. Her necklace is a made thing of string and colored buttons. Now I'd like to talk about my children, because one of them is here. My Matthew came to hear me read, thankfully. So I put in 3 children's poems in his honor, and to embarrass him a little. The first one is called Lost Connection. I'd see you as a child leaving my neighbor's house. You'd slam the back door, shrug into your red jacket, backpack, run headlong through the creaking gate to catch up with my sons boarding the yellow bus. One day your science teacher taught you all to make phones from taut pieces of knotted string and orange juice cans. You meandered down the alley, together yoked by tin and twine conversation. Years passed, things changed. I watched you learn to drive. Depressing the wrong pedal for a crash landing, you crushed the corner frame of the garage door and the front fender of your father's Ford. You married in your backyard. The groom pushed layers of white cake into your face, smeared it with what appeared more like vengeance than love. You were pregnant. You lost the baby, then the marriage. Years passed. Your father died. Your mother followed. You moved back into your parents' home, alone. I sang hellos across the fence as we hung out washed, swept our separate sidewalks. Today I watched you leave your mother's house, sheriffed out by mortgage bills, lost jobs, bad luck. My goodbyes hollow, unable to express my sense of loss, as if I tried to speak through a tin can pulled tight against a twanging string. And this one, Empty Nest. My husband always said he didn't understand poetry. This is the one poem of mine that brought him to tears. Every time he read it, he cried. It's called Empty Nest. Have you seen them? Missing, these 2 children, last seen at the edge of memory. Yellow-headed, blue-eyed wanderer, bracelets of baby fat around the hands he holds out for hugs. His brother, eyes like polished amber, who fidgets with his fingers and speaks in precocious phrases. Both stepped confidently forward along unfamiliar pathways and were spun away on the crushing wheels of time. Their photographs should be displayed on milk cartons, on bulletin boards in banks. Lost, these 2 sweet babies. Their broken-hearted mother searches for them in other people's children, because she cannot find them in the slender and self-possessed young men who stand before her now. And the last one there. The prodigal's mother speaks. You hear about the father. He ran out to welcome the wayward kid, smashed the jar, took his son into the house after the son had gone off and done what he wanted to do. You don't hear a word about the mother. So here she is. I have rocked you in my body, small ship inside flawed bottle, eager to set sail on stranger seas. In a dream, I carried you past fallen fence rails into a quiet orchard where branches offered both white blossoms and ripened fruit. For you, I have created mythology, gibbous moon waxing, the tallest pointing pine, wild grasses, morning star, oracle maiden tattooed with symbols of eternity. For you, I would design rites of passage, painless but significant. I would set your path into the mountains with flat stones deeply chiseled with words like courage and believe. You have made me a fog-bound ancient harbor. I watch the east horizon for signs of your returning sail. And another lost person, a friend whom I lost, who was very dear to me, and who I have since reclaimed. The story has a happy ending, but for years we did not speak. Ariel. Until today, I didn't realize I have been looking for you in every delicate girl with sun-streaked hair and pale blue eyes. You left a mystery, emotion unspoken, sentences incomplete. I search faces of people passing by for the closing word I always meant to say. Friendships finished, others drift away. We'll do lunch becomes punchline. Your memories linger. You were mermaid, slippery with secrets. A friend of mine captured you, cast his net carefully, and brought you in, but not for long. Mermaids are sea foam. Humans expect substance. Today I reach toward a stranger's shoulder blade, your name between my lips. Caught myself, wondering if you still walk like an arcane nymph on this dry, prosaic land. I attended an independent church whose members went to Central America, I get Central and South confused, to work with the Huichol Indians every chance that they had. And one of the projects that they were doing high in the mountains on these narrow little mule trails was to implant solar-driven tablets that the natives could touch and learn the scripture in their own language. And so I wrote this poem about those people. And forgive me, Emmanuel, I called it Ojo de Dios. I'm sure I didn't pronounce that right, but Ojo de Dios. Below the clamor of the world, close against the bone, waits righteousness, as hard as stone, sharp and straight as nail or thorn. It curves the arch of feet that walk rocky mountain slope, where people weave with colored rope and two cross sticks the eye of God. Beneath that eye, small donkeys toil upward toward a place where none has heard the news of grace, bearing men who live by faith. The air is thin, the path tilts hard toward the precipice. Deep calls to deep for sacrifice, trades the world for righteousness. Below the clamor of the world, close against the bone, waits righteousness, as sharp as thorn, weeping glory like a crown. And this again, the Bible is a rich source of stories, many of them, as C.S. Lewis said, just strange enough to be true. And one of the stories that children learn, usually when they're little, is the book of Job, the story of the man who went through many tribulations. How many times did hirelings fall through his door, sweating and wild-eyed? 4. All saying the same thing, I alone survived. Of sheep and oxen, servants, children, one alone from each direction of the compass. It would have been hilarious had it not been so serious. And there sits Job, caught in this vaudeville mode between Satan and God, all lost except these 4, all his bone and blood, his devices, sacrifices, holy prayers and rich uprightness, non-availing. Seems his rotes and rites are failing. Meanwhile, his wife is wailing, curse God and die. No sympathy offered here. 3 comforters draw near with bad advice to pour into his oozing ear. He scrapes his boils amid the ruins of his toil, this paragon, to whom the great omniscient one need not explain what he has done. Scholars now say it's all a frame, simple way to show how pain holds sway, and suffering comes to all. Written to portray the gains and losses, double crosses, we will know as our time passes. After trouble, Job received his life back, double. It's all there in the Bible. Yet one must ask, was his desire to obtain 2 of everything again? 8 servants with wild eyes coming in to complain, bringing awful news, children in 2s, and if the doubling trend held true throughout his life, more comforters with words of strife, and possibly a second wife? And this poem is called Times Table. It came from 2 sources. Stephen does a beautiful job with expressed poetry. I do not. I can't look at a painting and write a poem. But there was a photograph in 1938 called Falling Drop of Milk by Egerton, which was probably some of the original slow motion photography. It showed a drop of milk falling down or into a bowl of milk and caught the splash of the ripple effect coming up like a pointed crown with a little drop on each point. The other part of this poem is from the Bible again, where St. Peter dreamed after many food restrictions that a tablecloth came down and God told him that he could eat anything on the tablecloth, and it was all manner of beast and fowl. And Peter said, but these are not clean. And God said, how dare you call filthy what I call clean? And gave him permission to eat it all. So from both those sources came this poem, Times Table. Fluid and calcium creatures sprung from the mindless herd, head down, gnawing sparse winter grass. What call of comfort falls at twilight, like tablecloth of Peter's dream, where all beasts are presented whole, made clean by God's own believing. It is what you speak that matters. It is what God speaks that matters. It is what all matter speaks. Speechless, dulled to my own desires, in the throne room of God, I lay my bony hand against his massive knee and fall, like a drop of milk, into an earthen bowl, where impact splashes fluid and calcium upward to form a perfect crown. The last part of my reading deals with age, because I am older than I can believe. When I go past a mirror, it's like, good Lord, is that Aunt Margaret? I can hardly deal with the outside of me, because the inside is eternally 12 years old. So this poem was the first poem I wrote feeling my age, and it's called Signs of Age. I have always been an ochre rag knotted on a splintered stick, twisting in hard winds. I no longer believe that the runaway dog comes home, that a squirrel can safely sprint across the city street. I am yellow crime scene tape across a sudden pit, pulled thin, first letter worn away. Read me, anger, do not cross this line. I am a weathered gray bone, tossed to the wind across the city street for a runaway dog to chase. And reverse magic, when I was a child, my father was very aloof and indifferent. He didn't seem to like children, but he would take me fishing. I was the closest thing to a boy that he had. And I loved sitting on the banks of the Susquehanna, watching the river flow, and ultimately getting that optical illusion where the land begins to move this way and the river's kind of standing still. So this poem is called Reverse Magic. I should have pushed a branch through the center of my rippled reflection, down to the yielding bed, or dropped a rock on the scalloped hem of the fast-moving current, to slow, to stop the flow before it swept away, brief eddies where fish puff O's with fluid lips, kiss cool water their gills receive, expel, and above them the feet of ducks dangle like blurred orange stars to wish upon. Gusts of summer, I forgot to breathe deeply enough. There is so much I missed, and now I can only stare down the receding river till illusion shifts the ground under me. The river becomes still. The astonished trees roll slowly with leafy branches, setting the land in motion. When I was young, 50 years ago, I was 5'10" and I weighed 126. What do you think of that? Now I'm 5'7", and while I measure less, I weigh somewhat more. So this poem is called The Fat Lady Sings. I shall be thin enough, eventually, with cheekbones sharp as glossy girls of fashion. Lidded and locked where critics cannot see, I shall be thin enough. Eventually, this too solid flesh shall melt away, carrying with it hate and hope and passion. Where even hair and barest bone decay, I shall be thin enough, eventually. Melt pounds off in your sleep, the ads proclaim. In the long view, a claim more true than fiction. No use for diets, no more food for shame. I shall be thin enough, eventually. And I think the last of my old folks' poems, maybe the second last, is instead of finding romance, you reach a stage where you are you, and you kind of give up on a romantic love affair coming along. So this is mine. Instead of finding romance, I want to wear a cotton jacket, patchwork of denim and royal blue, age-bleached cuffs rolled back. I want to be bowed, broad-shouldered, square, walk out to meet the morning with garden shears, stomp the sparse grass in worn brogans. I want to be the town character, one who causes people to half smile when the neighbors discuss me. I want to putter in the yard, set out a painted trellis, grow bitter grapes, chain a big yellow mutt to the arch post on sunny days, bring him in at night, fling a plush rug across my bed for him to stretch out on. I want to sleep hard, my grizzled head against his massive one. Want to dream of dancing to the rhythm of his breathing. Dream that I am light-footed, sailing and twirling like a maple seed, pliant as wheatgrass in the October wind. And the last one combines poetry and age, called Final Revision. When I come to that place where I can only sprawl in shadows, drooling poetry from the corner of my mouth, my desire will be not so much to pass a torch, but to illuminate the way a butterfly wings trembled on the petals of a violet, how the incandescent sky snapped heat's flashbulb flicker, and the light made flaming wicks from blades of grass. And then I'm going to close with William Stafford again. This is a poem that we should all read. The problem with this poem is that the word yoke, not yoke, back up, erase that. The word woke is being used as a password now, the woke generation before they were woke. And this poem deals with awakening, but it was here first. A ritual to read to each other. If you don't know the kind of person I am, and I don't know the kind of person you are, a pattern that others made may prevail in the world. And following the wrong God home, we may miss our star. For there is many a small betrayal in the mind, a shrug that lets the fragile sequence break, sending with shouts the horrible errors of childhood storming out to play through the broken dike. And as elephants parade, holding each other's tail, but if one wanders, the circus won't find the park. I call it cruel, and maybe the root of all cruelty, to know what occurs, but not recognize the fact. And so I appeal to a voice, to something shadowy, a remote, important region in all who talk. Though we could fool each other, we should consider lest the parade of our mutual life get lost in the dark. For it is important that awake people be awake, or a breaking time may discourage them back to sleep. The signals we give, yes or no, or maybe, should be clear. The darkness around us is deep. Thank you.
The Pennsylvania Poetry Society, Incorporated, wishes to thank our featured poet, Miss Carol Clark Williams, for sharing her wonderful works with her fellow poets in attendance and those now watching this video. Please Google Carol Clark Williams to buy her works. For information in joining the PPS Incorporated, please visit our Facebook page or our website, www.nfsps.com/PA. Recorded and edited by John G. Rupert and JG Root Promotions. Please hit subscribe to see all of our past and upcoming videos. Thank you for your continued support. November 5th, 2022.